Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Friday, July 10th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. It is a sad reality in our country where hundreds of thousands of people, actually literally millions of people, are having to make the conscious decision of going out into this pandemic and putting their lives on the line in order to feed their children. This is a testament to how far gone our system is. The United States of America and the rulers of this country, as well as the rulers of this world, have created conditions that have so enslaved us that many people are resolved to just simply risk their lives for a paycheck, because what else are they supposed to do? This is the baseline in the country, quite frankly. And it is a baseline that further emboldens the ruling elite. It is a system that keeps us in a cycle that is so vicious that people are making this decision and they make it with a level of resolve. They are saying, and they say it with a level of certainty, of confidence, and determination that they are going to go out and weather this storm, go out into this plague, because they have no other choice. The other choice is for us to tear this system down, quite frankly. That is the other choice. You do have a choice. We do have a choice, but it is not a choice that we can venture off on by ourselves. We are faced. I'm going to say the same thing over and over again in different ways to make sure that you understand the severity of the moment. While some of us are comfortably sitting at home making our money, like myself, I do this podcast. It finally started paying the bills. You know, I used to work 3 jobs doing this podcast. I used to work 2 jobs, come home and do this podcast. And now finally, this podcast is making enough money that I can safely provide for my family from home. That is not the story of the majority of Americans. Many of you listening to this are able to make your money from home, but that is not the story of all of our listeners. There are people who every single morning have to make the conscious decision to go out and risk their lives in this pandemic just so that they can survive. And I think it's not a guilt feeling that is driving me. It's fury that's driving me. What I mean by that is I don't feel guilty that I'm able to stay home and make my money. I am enraged that everyone else is not able to. I am enraged because the government, who knows it is fully capable of providing a basic income for every individual in this country to survive this pandemic, refuses to do so, and instead is forcing all of our teachers, all of our essential workers to risk their lives every single day. I am enraged because the comfort that I have should be a human right in a pandemic. And during a plague, everyone should have the privilege that I have to sit at home and ride this thing out without putting their lives on the line. But instead, the government and the rulers of this country understand that this system is so vicious. It is so vicious and so sealed. It is like a hermetically sealed bubble that no one can get out of. It is a vicious cycle that people will go out into this storm. And I am not going to say what I'm getting ready to say is not to offend the people who are making these decisions. I'm getting ready to say something that is offensive, but this is how the rulers view us. They view us as automatons, mindless hive workers, bees in a hive, mindlessly going out into this world with no other hope than to work all of our lives, providing them with the labor that they need to get rich and the consumption that they need to get rich, and then we die. That's how they view us. And they are counting on us to maintain that automaton nature in the middle of this pandemic and to never take a step back and say, wait a minute, we do have an option. And the option is to give the middle finger to the system and refuse to put our lives on the line simply to be able to feed our children. We are not in a barbarian stage of civilization where we would have to go out and kill animals and risk our lives in order to feed our children. We are ostensibly in a civilized era of world history. But how civilized is it for us to be able, let me rephrase this whole thing. We are more barbaric than any barbarian, than any Neanderthal, than anything that we can compare to in the past, because we have the ability to take care of our brothers and our sisters, but we refuse to do so because the rulers of this country benefit from us mindlessly going to work every single day, believing that we don't have another option. We do have another option. And it is a difficult option. I do not downplay I don't downplay this. I don't downplay at all the struggle. I'm not going to use this time I guess I am going to use this time to give you the extent to which I understand the struggle. I do understand the struggle. I do understand how crushing your bills are. I do understand how crushing the pressure is to not know how you're going to pay your rent. I know that firsthand. I know it so recently that if it wasn't for the Michael Bloomberg story, I would be in the same situation, not knowing how the hell I was going to pay my rent. But thankfully, I was able to take down an oligarch, and here we are. I can pay my bills now. I guess the spoils of war, or whatever the hell you want to call it. But just before that, in February, mind you, that was February of this year. It seems like years ago. But I know the struggle. I know the pressure. I know it all the way I've been on unemployment as an adult. I've been on unemployment as a married man with children. I have been in very difficult situations. So I'm not saying this for you to agree with me. I'm saying this so that you understand that I in no form or fashion downplay the significance and the painfulness of this struggle, of the compelling force to go out there and make this money so that you could feed your kids. I get it. And that's why it has to take all of us. For us to survive this, it's literally going to take everybody. It's going to take every person who has ever been so worried about their bills that they lay up late at night, stressed out, not sure if the pain in their chest is a heart attack or if you don't know what it is. But you do know that if you keep stressing on this level every single day, that it's going to inevitably lead to a heart attack. I understand that because I've been there. And I do understand how crushing it is and embarrassing it is to not have as much money as people think you should have at this stage in life. I get it. That's a part of this system. That's a part of the control mechanism. It's a control mechanism for us to be worried about what other people think about us and how much money we don't have. And even if we don't care what other people think about us, we think less of ourselves because we haven't succeeded at the level. That's still a part of the system that keeps us going out like bees in a hive, automatons, working this system, toiling in the fields until we die. And the thing is whereas that has been moderately acceptable in times past, because at least when you were toiling in the fields until you died, unless something else happened, you could live till you're 60, 70 and then die. But now they're sending us out to toil in the fields with the pandemic that can kill us in 3 weeks, with the virus that can kill us in 3 weeks. And they expect us to carry out the same functions that we do as if nothing has changed, as if there's no pandemic outside, as if 130,000 people haven't already died. They're trying to demand teachers go back into the classroom, even though we see and we know for sure that one of the worst places we could send our family and our children would be into an enclosed structure with concentrated populations. But the rulers of this country don't care. The president doesn't care. The governors don't care. The billionaires don't care, because they know that they have us trapped in this maze that keeps us just rolling through every single day like a mindless automaton. And this is not me insulting us. I want you to understand how they perceive us. They don't think that we have it in us to actually rebel against this system. They do not think, and I mean what I say. When I say rebel against this system, I specifically mean rebelling against the notion that we have to put our lives at risk in order to just survive this pandemic. What an oxymoron is that? The fact that we have to risk our lives in order to try to save our lives? This is the conundrum that they have placed us in, because if we don't go out and risk our lives, then we're not going to be able to feed our children and we're not going to make it. I don't think the people that rule this country honestly believe that we have it in us to absolutely reject and rebel against this broken system. This system is so vicious that people have simply resolved in their hearts that they have to risk their lives in order to feed their children during the middle of a pandemic in a country that is rich enough to be able to pay every single person a basic income to survive this pandemic. This country, we create enough wealth. The country is rich because of us. This is not a gift from the government. This is the government saying, let's allocate the resources that we derive from the people and give it to the people in order for the people to survive. Instead, they're saying, let's take the money and the resources that we derive from the people and give it to the billionaires. Give it to corporations. The corporations are going to fare just fine, but they're forcing teachers to have to risk their lives when bastards on Wall Street never have to miss a beat. They don't have to worry about anything because they have forgivable loans that are already going to be forgiven, loans that allow them to not have to go out into the pandemic and risk their lives. But you, the listener, you either have to go out or somebody that you know has to go out, and millions of people across this country are being forced to go out. That's because this system has us in a cycle that is so vicious that people simply have come to the resolve that they just have to risk their lives, that they simply have to just be willing to potentially die so that they can feed their children in a country with enough wealth to ensure that every household gets enough to survive through this pandemic. But they are so selfish. They are so evil. They are so malevolent. And they think so lowly of us that they would let us be forced with a conundrum that's not even necessary. It is completely unnecessary for teachers to be in this situation. It's completely unnecessary for families to be in this situation, for families who have to go out and work and at jobs that are not even essential. I'm sorry, McDonald's is not essential. I'm sorry, Burger King is not essential. No restaurant is essential. None of that is essential right now. What is essential are the bare necessities that we need to keep functioning as a society, and McDonald's is not one. But yet and still, we have hundreds of thousands of people across the country being forced to go out and work at these jobs that expose them on a regular basis, that barely pay them a minimum wage, in a country that has enough wealth that they take from us, that our labor creates, that our consumption creates. I want you to make sure that you understand that there is no wealth in this country that has not been benefited by you personally. There is no billionaire in this country that in some form or fashion has not benefited and gained their wealth through you personally. The government is not as mighty as it is without you personally. All that you see and all that people envy and all the things that we idolize, the yachts and the boats and the glamour and the glitz and the stars and the red carpet, that's generated by the people. And in our darkest hour, these malicious bastards, the scum of the earth, who happen to be the richest people on the earth, are forcing us into an untenable situation where we have to choose going out into a pandemic and risking our lives or our children going hungry. God damn America. what options do we have? What options do we have at our disposal? I mean, there's unity in numbers, right? If we had enough numbers, we could easily do what has to be done, like a general strike, if we had the numbers. But we don't have the numbers, and that's on purpose, right? The way our system is set up, it's extremely difficult for us to coalesce around the people. Let me say that more precisely. It's extremely difficult for the people to coalesce. And that's on purpose, because the people who would have the ability to galvanize the people, the organizations that would have the ability to galvanize the people, are at the disposal of the ruling elite. And so specifically, like if you want to get very specific, the media, completely controlled by the ruling elite. Even some of the top organizers in this country, people with vast email lists, and they probably could make moves to galvanize millions upon millions of people. You'll find that there are a lot of people who are screaming, who are acting as if they are revolutionary, who are also complicit with this power structure. Because what's happening in front of us right now is quite literally the only thing that matters. The only thing that we really should be focusing on. I'm never really one to tell people what they should be worried about. I generally don't like it when commentators or people with platforms try to lecture people about, yeah, that's a distraction. Or don't worry about this, that's a distraction. Don't worry about this controversial issue because that's a distraction. And generally when people do that, it's because they only want you to worry about what they can make money off of, right? Or what generates their money or their platform and builds their audience. People don't want you to be upset about something that's not in their purview, right? That's why you literally have people out here who are demanding that you don't take this virus seriously because it doesn't fit in the purview of what they discuss. They discuss conspiracy theories. And so they would rather you ignore, or they discuss like anti-LGBTQ rights, right? Anything. You can take any number of things that people with platforms discuss that want you to focus on that and not something else, because that something else doesn't make them money. I know that's kind of in the weeds, but it's an important point in what I'm getting ready to say. I hate when people do that. However, the only thing that really should matter to most people right now is the fact that millions of Americans are being sent out into a plague, forced to find a way to feed their children when the government is more than capable of providing some stability for every single American, but it refuses to do so because it would prefer putting our lives at risk than it would ever letting the people realize that there's something that could be done differently in this country. I've said a lot. But that's all we should be worried about right now. Anyone arguing over cancel culture, I honestly don't think you should be worried about that, because I probably would be the best person to get into that fight and get through in the minutia and give you all the logical fallacies of whoever argument. But I don't care about that shit right now, right? Whoever's talking about Donald Trump's taxes, like they're important, but they're not going to change the number of people who are going to die between now and the time we get him out of office. Because the people who could impeach him again are not going to impeach him again. So that is a distraction from the actual problem that is lurking around the corner. I think what I'm trying to say very plainly is that this is all that matters. The only thing that actually matters are the number of people who are going to be forced out of the safety of their homes into this pandemic because they have to feed their children and they don't know any other way. And if we had enough people focused on this, if we had enough people working on this and talking about this, tweeting about this, sharing it on social media all day, every day, we could save some lives. And so whereas I always hate telling people what you should be concerned about, I do think, dear God, that this is something that everybody should be sounding the alarm over. Everybody from kids on TikTok to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. The only thing that matters is the fact that this government is putting the lives of its citizens at risk, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. And I don't know if us even discussing that problem, right? The problem of nobody doing anything about the problem. I don't know if that itself is going to help lead to a solution to the problem, but I don't know what else to do. All I know what to do right now is to sound the alarm to as many people as possible and try. And I've seen it happen before. I've seen it happen before through my platform where it snowballs into something big enough to actually change America. Hell, we did it with Michael Bloomberg. So I don't know who I'm trying to convince, you or me. I don't know. But what I do know is that if we don't get all hands on deck and everybody come to the understanding, because this is what I can help you do. I can help you to understand that you have the right to refuse to put your life at risk to feed your children, especially in a country that has more than enough resources generated by you to help you through this pandemic. You do not have to be locked into this vicious cycle. You do not have to. And if enough people get that revelation, and if enough people can gain their independence, we have to gain our independence from this malicious and vicious cycle. We have to, in some way, even if it's just you and a handful of people, your family, like I'm doing with my family. I'm working on how we fix this on a national level. But but what I've done in the meantime is to try to fix it on my family level and how we can abstain from the system. I'm telling you, I try not to bring a lot of religious jargon into the show because I can make the logical argument that it parallels the religious argument. I can make it in a logical fashion without the need of religion, right? But I'm telling you, this has the most religious overtones ever. It seems as though the only way we are going to survive the wickedness in high places, those rulers, those politicians, those billionaires, those people who have no regard for our life, the only way we are going to survive their wickedness is if we come out from among them and do something for ourselves. And if we can't quite yet do it on a national level, this is an emergency. And we must start doing it on a smaller scale. We must immediately, everybody listening to me, you immediately need to find a community that you all can become self-sustaining amongst each other and help provide for each other, whether it be shared living conditions, whether it be sharing of resources and income, sharing of food, whatever you need to do so that you are not forced to be put into this vicious cycle led by malicious men who have no regard for your safe being, for your safety, for your well-being. I'm sorry, whatever I sound like, I honestly don't care. To anybody who's listening to me is like, oh, he's such an alarmist. I don't give a shit what you say, because all I'm saying to you is the risk that I would not allow my family to take. The risk that I'm willing to put all of my income, split it between my family and make sure that nobody has to make that choice. That risk that I don't want my family to take, I don't want you to have to take. And if you don't care, then fine, you go and do what you do. But I know that there's enough people listening to me who understand the severity of the moment, who understand why we must do this ourselves. And the very first step in doing this ourselves is realizing that we do not have to be slaves to this system that has no regard even for our life. I repeat, you do not have to be enslaved in a system that has no regard for your life. Listen, before we go to this patron break, I want to put a fine point on something. The fact that we have to come out from among them. That is a religious statement that anyone who's been in like a day in church, you know exactly what that means. It usually references us having to, quote unquote, come out from amongst the sinners and come out from amongst the world. But the irony of this moment is that we're literally having to come out from amongst people who profess to be Christians, right? They have weaponized Christianity to the point where they can say praise the Lord on Sunday morning and then turn around and send people to their death in a pandemic. They are heirs to the same people who used to say praise the Lord on Sunday after they just got through lynching black people on Saturday night. But I digress. The point is that we are going to have to separate ourselves from this system. And I want you to be clear on what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we're going to come out from America and go into some kind of, whatever. I'm not saying that. No, I'm saying you as an individual your mind has to be liberated. You have to come out from that thinking that you just mindlessly, and this is no insult to you, but this is what they need. They need people to mindlessly give them their labor, their consumption, and their participation, all the way to the point of doing it in a pandemic and risking your lives to continuously participate in a system that doesn't give a damn about you. Liberate yourself from that thinking first and foremost, and I think we'll be able to find a way to change it on a national level. Change your mind first, and then we can change this country.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Kristen Rose. Thank you for becoming a patron. Show Rap, thank you for becoming a patron. Joe Frollo, thank you for becoming a patron. And Philip Davis, thank you for becoming a patron. Everybody just bob your head. There it is, DC, DMV. I'm sorry, but I just love go-go. I know I could play some different music here, but it's got a bop, right? You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut and unfiltered interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak power to the powerless, whether the powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yep. All right. Let me just finish that last thought. I kind of got cut off by the patron party, but we got to do the patron party. Special thanks to everyone who supports this show. So here's my final thought on this. We have to change our thinking first and foremost. It may very well be too late for this coronavirus. It may be the fact that some people are going to unfortunately be forced out because we don't have critical mass. We don't have a big enough group of people to enact an effective general strike, a strike on rent, a strike on labor, and a strike on consumption. We may not hit that critical mass, but I'm going to talk about it regardless, because this is not the only crisis that is going to be a threat to people's lives. This is not, if anything, the coronavirus is showing us just how far this government is willing to go, quite honestly, to ignore the needs of the people. And while this may not be resolved during the coronavirus, I hope that it is. I hope that we can unify and galvanize a movement big enough to actually bring this government into submission to the people. If we don't get it this time, we got to be working on it right now for the thing that's coming right behind this. Think about what this government would do during full automation when they don't need your labor. I want to make an emphasis on something that I've been saying. We fight so hard for labor, but the reality is the ultimate goal of capital is to not even need labor. And so when we hit full automation, if the government, who doesn't give a shit about the 45 million people who are unemployed, doesn't care about whether or not you have to go out into the pandemic and die in order to feed your children, what do you think they're going to do when hundreds of millions of people cannot find jobs because of automation? The thing that they're going to do is to not care and ignore us. And they're going to continue to enrich the wealthy at our expense. They're going to continue to allow the economy of the ruling elite to thrive while the economy of the people is devastated. And so we have to be prepared for that. And so while in my mind, I'm like, it's almost too late for us to move in a fashion strong enough to impact how this government is treating the workers of this country during this pandemic. What we have to learn from this is that by not being prepared for this, we are vulnerable to the whims of the rulers of this country. And so we must take the lesson from this and be prepared not only for automation, but also climate change, where millions of people in this country alone are going to be displaced, causing an entire upheaval in our entire system. And do you think they're going to get the rulers of this country, the politicians and the billionaires, the oligarchs, do you think that they're going to care about your well-being in that situation when they have clearly demonstrated that they don't care about your well-being in this situation? I hope, I don't know, maybe something will happen and we can galvanize a movement large enough to have the impact that we need to have during COVID-19. But if we don't, we sure as hell better be preparing right now for everything else that is getting ready to come, because during COVID-19, this government has demonstrated that it does not care about the people. It will make decisions that actively harms the people. It does not give any regard. It does not have any regard for your safety and your well-being. You are cannon fodder to them. They don't care. To them, you are a mindless automaton that is going to go to work even if it costs you your life. And that is precisely what has to change. We have to change that paradigm, and we must change our thinking first. Patrons, stay tuned. Everyone else, thank you for being a beautiful audience. I will see you Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Okay, patrons, let's keep going. I really should have just said this on the public show to put a fine point on everything else, but whatever. Thank you for being a patron. That's why you're a patron. You get the inside access to even more information. I just wanted to, you know damn well Barron Trump is not going to be put in this conundrum. Barron Trump is not going to be sent to any public school. Hell, even private school. He's going to have tutors who are going to come and be tested every day before they go into the room with him and give him a world-class education 101. And yet this is the son of the leader who is insisting that these schools open. The class warfare of what's happening right now is so egregious. It is so egregious. And the fact that they really, they're counting on the fact that it's difficult for us to galvanize a movement. A movement of 50 million people, right? A movement of 50 million people would be such a threat to this country that they would do if they would crush it. But it would take a movement of numbers of that magnitude to actually be able to organize a response to the negligence of this government. The complete and utter negligence of this, negligence to the point of maliciousness. I don't know. Everybody has a role to play. I often get frustrated because I don't have the reach sufficient to actually organize this myself. But perhaps that's not my role right now. My role right now is to just put it in context, put it in proper context for everyone to understand, and to make sure that you keep that the people who listen to me get it. Perhaps that's just my role right now. And later on, we'll never know. We may get those kind of numbers so that we can actually make the impact. But the problem is that the people with those kinds of numbers, we're so distracted by everything else. I don't know. I'm going to ask the question, but I already have my answer. So maybe I shouldn't ask the question, but whatever. It's the Patriots episode. We just let it hang loose. Do you think I'm too concerned about this? Do you think that well, no, I can't even ask the next one. I was going to say, do you think I'm overreacting? But no. I am arguably one of the most measured people in this commentary space. And I take a lot of time to think about things. And I have had enough time to sit and consider this coronavirus and particularly the American response to it to understand what's really happening around us. And it drives me into a fury when I see how easily distracted the rest of us are. I love everybody in my space, in my leftist space, but God damn it, I don't give a shit about Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, any of that shit right now. I don't. I can't even fake it. I can't bring myself to actually care. Because all of that, what does it matter to a family who's going to lose a loved one because we didn't move fast enough or strong enough? What does it matter? What does it matter to about cancel culture? Everyone is talking about cancel culture, and I know what's going on. I pay attention. J.K. Rowling and her anti-trans stance, and then all the people who signed that letter and to attack cancel culture, and Noam Chomsky being a part of that, a signatory. I get it, but goddamn it, I don't care. Because everybody who signed that letter is not going to have to go out to work in this pandemic. We are so distracted. And it's like, it takes something the magnitude of a vicious murder of a black man on tape for 8 minutes and 46 seconds of sheer terror for us to have an all hands on deck approach to what was happening. But yet we have 135,000 people who are dead, and we're so desensitized to it that we have no unified reaction. So I'm going to ask a question here that I don't want the answer to, but we need to contemplate. Who the hell has to die from COVID-19 for us to ignore all of the petty shit that's going on around us and have an all hands on deck approach to making the people who are responsible for that death or holding them accountable? That's what I want to say. Who has to die for the people to hold this government accountable over COVID-19? I don't want to answer, but I also don't think that there is an answer. I think that we have become so accustomed to the numbers of dying people that we've seen that there's no one in particular and no scenario in particular that will galvanize us into complete and total action. But I can convince you to take care of yourself and to liberate your mind. So that's what I'm going to do. It's kind of like a scenario of save who you can. Save who you can. That's it. That's it. I do appreciate the fact that as it stands right now, the death rate seems to be lower. But I fear, because most people think, I in this coronavirus, the hardest parts, the deadliest parts seem to come in week 3 and week 4. And people who are just getting diagnoses in the last 2 weeks, like, I fear that the worst is yet to come. In fact, I was just reading an article to that effect, that the worst of coronavirus, because of all these new cases, it's really to come. We see that the number of home deaths, people dying in their homes, has risen significantly. We've even seen funeral homes say they can't take any more bodies. And they're literally calling for like the National Guard to send refrigerator trucks. It would be different if this pandemic was being managed the best way possible. And then in that scenario, all we could do is ride it out. The government doing the best it could. You know, as many people were staying home as possible. The government providing resources for the people, or reallocating the resources that we give them and have them allocated to the people. And, you know, if the government was doing its part, I could see the virtue, quite honestly, in discussing everything else. Because why would we need to discuss the tragedy of the moment when we have done everything that we could do? You understand what I'm saying? Like, we would need, and rightfully so, seek out some entertainment to hold us over until the storm is past. But the problem in the United States of America is that we have a government that is doing exactly the opposite. And so, because that's where this virus that is being managed by scientists, or at least they're trying their best, manage is not the right word. This virus that is being investigated and treatments are being developed and a vaccine is being developed by scientists, this virus is being mismanaged by our political system. And in that it's being mismanaged by our political system, those of us who give commentary on politics, what the hell else is there to talk about? I do my best to want to discuss other things. And I do go on other shows, and because it's their shows, I'll talk about whatever they want to talk about and we can laugh. But I just feel like it's my responsibility to make people understand not only the problem, but the solution. And here's the problem with the solution. The problem with the solution is a long-term solution, and we have an immediate crisis. Okay? The solution is for us to galvanize a movement of tens of millions of people, as many as we possibly can, educate them along the way to make sure that they understand that they have the right to not put their lives on the line and potentially die to feed their kids. That we have the right to not put our lives at risk in a country that has the resources that it took from us. They have the resources to do this. And we should change our disposition from being mindless automatons serving in a system that will brutalize and watch us die, and change that disposition to one of expectation, saying, I fully expect a government and an economy that are directly benefiting from our labor, consumption, and participation. I fully expect that you turn and provide for us in a season where we cannot provide for ourselves without risking our lives. Those are still long-term solutions. But we got to start somewhere. The short-term solution is if you got a circle of friends and you guys could do this together, you know, fuck a rent. I don't care about rent. Who cares about your credit? See, look at how people are afraid to drop their apartment, pack up their stuff, take the eviction. You know why? They're afraid to take that eviction because they don't want their credit score messed up. Because one day they have the dreams of buying a home. All of these are tools of the system to keep you locked in the system. I was talking to my sister yesterday, and I was telling her how much I was going to be willing, how much I could afford to donate to members of the family that are teachers so that they don't have to go back to school. And her first concern was like, she was appreciative, but she was like, Ben, you got to put money away for your kids and for college and stuff like that. And I'm like, you're right. But what does any of that matter if one of you gets sick and dies and I could have done something about it? The moral of that story is that we are so bound. I do believe I'm going to make this whole episode public. This is important. Okay. If we are so bound, not you, we being people who have the capacity to help others, we have enough money spare at the end of the month. If we that make our money from home and don't have to go out into this pandemic, I need to get very specific in this. Like, there's a privileged group of us who can make this money from our home, and we have enough to spare because we're not going out into the pandemic. We're not eating out every day anymore. We're not spending $300 on gas in each car anymore, right? We actually have money, and all we're doing is either saving the money or we are buying more widgets. If those of us who are in that privileged position prioritize the standard trappings of this society, what versus our ability to combine our resources to save some lives? Let me get even more specific. If I am not willing to part ways with a good percentage of my income that I'm not spending right now to help my sisters out, what kind of human being am I? Right? And then, if I didn't have any sisters, if I wasn't willing to do that and stretch it as far as I could to help strangers for that matter, it doesn't matter to me. I'll figure out college for my kids after this pandemic is over, right? I'll figure out a savings account for maybe having a home one day after this is over. But this system is so twisted that some of us would, even if it's not maliciously doing it, even if we don't do it with malice, we just do it out of anxiety because we fear, what if my savings account goes too low? It's weird that I'm having to talk about this, but the times are so different. We have so many people who are in need right now. So many people who are forced to make decisions that we would never want to make ourselves. I'm not going to let that happen to my family. And I'm talking about this because perhaps you are in a position to help replicate that in someone else's life. Now, that does mean that we have to consolidate. We have to be willing to give up some things. If you got a second car and it's just sitting in the driveway, I don't care. Let it go. I don't care. Personally, I don't want a repossession on my record. No, I don't. But I'm not going to be so bound to the trappings of this society that I'm going to continue paying like whatever X amount of dollars that I'm paying a month for a car that I'm not going to use in the time that somebody else could either use that car or they could use the resources for that car. I'm not asking, listen, let me be sure. This is the patrons episode, so I'm thinking out loud. You can feel free to disagree with me, which some of you do, and you come in the comment section. Totally cool, right? I don't have this fleshed out totally, but to me, it makes no sense for those of us. No. Let me just talk about me. It makes no sense for me to be in a position to help, but not be willing to sacrifice to actually help. Like sacrifice to the point where it hurts. Sacrifice to the point where I not only give up my creature comforts, but I give up. I give up more. That's the mentality that we are going to need for us to take care of each other. In the absence of a government that could very easily do it, where no one would have to give up anything. But because we have a government that not only is not going to do that, but they're actively making decisions to put people in these conundrums that none of us would ever have to be faced with. None of us want to be faced with the decision of whether or not we're going to go out and put our lives at risk so that we can make a check, or be at home and don't know how long we could be in that home because we would potentially lose that home and not be able to feed our children. None of us want to be faced with that conundrum, but that is precisely what this government is making us do. And so while I discuss the thinking that is necessary for us to start galvanizing a broader movement and the liberation in our minds that needs to occur so that we come out from among that thinking, the thinking that we have to continue to serve a system that wants to destroy us because we don't know what else to do, or we don't think that there's something else that we can do. Yes, there is something else that we can do, which is to rebel against this system. However, that is going to take some time. For us to get critical mass, that's going to take some time. But what we can do in the meantime is that we can be our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper, our non-gender conforming individuals keeper. We can help take care of people we know and people that we don't know. We can do it on an individual basis. You could do it through some mutual fund organizations. And we also have to make sacrifices until such time we build a movement big enough to actually challenge this system and bring the ruling elite of this world to its knees. We got to take care of each other. So to my sister, what I said to my sister is the same thing that I say to you. Those of us that are in the privileged position, what does a savings account even mean right now when your brother is being forced to go out? Listen, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I don't expect you to do it. I don't. But I'm going to let you know that what I'm doing. And I'm doing it because I refuse to enjoy the comfort of quarantine while people I know, people that I love, and if all of them were working from home, then I would be demanding that all of us find other people to do it for. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, put it in perspective. My little savings account that I'm finally just started to get one. Finally just started to get one. None of that shit matters. Not when we are fighting in a system that we have to fundamentally change how we fight and how we take care of each other. We must have a spirit of collectivism. The fact that anyone is at risk means that we should treat it as if we are at risk. And the fact that anyone is in need, we should treat it as though we are in need. That's it. I do have one other thing that I could talk about other than the coronavirus today. I appreciate you all coming with me on this journey. And I think the reason that you're still here is because you understand the severity of the moment. And I feel that there's so much here. Like I would not just do shows over and over and over again, repeating the same thing, if I just didn't see that everything that is happening in the news, everything that's being done by this administration, everything that's happening on the state level, all of them represent significant issues that have some grounding in political philosophy. And I think as I unpack it, it gives us an opportunity to explore different facets of it, right? Different facets of political philosophy, some theory, and also to convert those instead of just an analysis. I try to convert those into something that we can use to change our thinking right now. And I try to do it in, and I just do it the way I do it, which is I try to make it accessible. So that's what I do. And I think that's why you stay here, even though the majority of this show is about nothing but COVID-19 and the failing of this government and how it really represents the future. It represents the future of America. If you take this turning point right here, unless we can collectively get together and demand something different from this government, the current trajectory of this future, of our future, is one of a dystopia that we have never seen. Like we have dystopias in novels, and we have them in movies, and you can see the dark and griminess of the future where corporations run everything and the people are nothing but disposable cogs in their machine. Well, shit, that's where we are right now. And so I just went through all that because I know that this is what we're talking about quite a bit right now. But I think that there are so many, I think there's so much here that makes the conversation worthwhile every single day. Otherwise, you wouldn't be downloading the episodes all the time. So that being said, I finally have something a little different to talk about today. That was one hell of a segue. Something different that I have to talk about today is the fact that it is July 10th, 2020. And it is the birthday of a dude that I look up to. My little brother. I really look up to that guy. And the reason I'm mentioning him on this show, it goes beyond my admiration for my little brother, but it goes to the fact that there would be no show if not for my little brother. So 6 years ago, when we lived in Boston for the first time, we lived in Boston and we moved to Atlanta, and now we're back in Boston. 6 years ago, when we lived there the first time, my little brother came up and stayed with us for, 3 months. And in that 3 months time, he can every day insisted, Ben, you need to do a podcast. Ben, you need to do a YouTube channel. Ben, you need to give commentary because you got something to say. I did not believe at that time that I had anything meaningful had anything that wasn't being said already. I honestly believed that the spectrum of politics I just felt like it didn't make sense to me that there would be a lane for me because I kind of believe in supply and demand. Maybe I shouldn't really believe in supply and demand so much, but at the time I did. I really believed that if there was a lane, that somebody would be occupying it. Little did I know that there was a wide open lane for somebody like me, which made Twitter in particular somewhat easy to quote unquote conquer. At the time, that's kind of how I perceived it, because I couldn't believe that there wasn't a black male progressive voice who just didn't give a shit and just said whatever the hell he wanted to say. And what he happened to want to say was rooted in love and compassion for humanity. And oh, by the way, there's so many shitty politics around us that prevents us from having that love and compassion for humanity on a regular basis. So I gotta arm up and let's take out these fools, right? I really thought that lane would be occupied because, I mean, if there's a demand, if there's a lane, then it's generally fulfilled. My brother didn't think so. He didn't agree with me. And he was like, no, man, just get out there and start talking. Because all the stuff that I used to talk about around the house or the apartment, he was like, people need to hear that. And so he insisted. And then he not only insisted, but he helped me develop it. He helped me develop it with the equipment and he recorded and edited my very first video that I think most of you have not seen. What was the name of that video, Robin? It was something about Black fathers. I forgot the title of it, but it was a video about Black fathers. But I digress. The point is it is his birthday, and I want to celebrate him because without him, I would probably still be talking shit in my apartment. and not having built a platform or developed a podcast or developed my voice and developed my Twitter account and gone through all of the hell that I've gone through over the last 5 years. It has been a hell of a ride, and I don't mean that in a good or bad way. It has been both good and definitely has been both bad and definitely good. Good because I've been able to connect with all of you. Great because we've been able to have impact. I would not have been in line to take down Michael Bloomberg, which I think has had some significant impact in America, because I fully believe that if not for Elizabeth Warren using the footage that I discovered in a 1-2 punch, I alley-ooped it to her and she slam dunked and got Michael Bloomberg up out of the paint, I think we would be dealing with Michael Bloomberg as a candidate right now. I honestly believe we would be dealing with Michael Bloomberg as a candidate. And so I could draw a direct line from my little brother insisting that I start this podcast and all the way to the point of dragging me by the hands to doing it. I can attribute that to him. So happy birthday to my little brother, Robin. And I want you all to wish him a happy birthday as well. He's a patron, and he's on Twitter. And if nothing else, maybe not wish him a happy birthday, but just thank him for seeing the value that I had to contribute to a conversation that I had no idea. Somebody has to see something in you. Sometimes somebody else has to see something in you. And I appreciate it being my little brother. And that's why I look up to him. Love you, Robin. Love you, patrons. Take care. Have a great weekend. I done got emotional. Ha! Knucklehead. Talk to you all later.